I may, and I'm sorry that only because this is one of the first uses of the open forum where there's been a request attached. I want to confirm that you would like to see the request for decision come back at the next council meeting related to this item, or would you like to open it for possible direction tonight? And if it's received for information, no further action.
The only way it would be brought forward for action tonight is if someone at council chose to make a motion pertaining to it. If not, then it will come back at a later time.
Thank you.
If someone feels strong enough to do so, I see no reason why we wouldn't entertain it. Do that now. But we have to start the meeting yet.
It felt like a meeting.
Do you have to add this agenda item then, or?
That would be appropriate. Ready to roll? Very good. Welcome, everyone. We are here for the Monday, June 8th regular council meeting. It is now 5:13 p.m. I'll call the meeting to order. The reason we are starting a few moments late is we had a presentation by a resident for our consideration, and the regular meeting will now be underway. So did anyone have anything to add to the agenda? Councillor Jacobson.
Sure, could I add item 5.7? Call it request for utility forbearance.
Utility concern. Very good. Add that at the end of request for decision then at 5.7. Anything else? Councillor Hoekstra.
I move that we accept the agenda as amended.
As amended, thank you. Everyone's good with that? All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. We have no public hearings. We will go right directly down to request for decision. We've got Senior Manager Arrears with us for bylaw 379.1, the tax penalty bylaw amendment. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. Good evening, Council. On May 25th, Council gave first and second reading to bylaw 379.1, tax penalty and payment bylaw amendment. By adopting this bylaw, Council is authorizing the city to waive any tax penalties that would normally be applied to any tax accounts that would remain unpaid after June 30th. This is one of the initiatives that Council approved on May 23rd. And by doing so, any residents that have until December 31st to pay their taxes. After December 31st, any amounts that remain unpaid will go in arrears, and they will be subject to tax penalty. This initiative will have a financial impact for the city of $143,000. That would be the penalty revenue that would have been earned by the city should this initiative not take place. And tonight, the administration is recommending that Council give third reading to bylaw 379.1 as presented. And with that, I'm open to any questions.
Thank you, Manager Reyes. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I move the council give third reading to bylaw 379.1.
Thank you. Questions from council? So just to be certain, this does take into account Schedule A as part of this bylaw, correct?
That is correct.
So I see that there was a slight increase in the arrears penalty as of January 1st at 10% as opposed to the normal one, which is at an earlier date, I realize, of 9%. I was just wondering what what the justification was for the difference in amount.
Okay, the 9% actually applies on July 1st. The 10% has always been there on January 1st. Any accounts that remain unpaid will be subject to 10%. So that's still the same as the prior year.
Very good. Chief Gotti?
So just to reiterate, because I had the same question for Senior Manager Reyes, it actually is not an increase. It's just that those two rates, the January 1st and the July 1st, have always, for some reason, been 1% difference. And in the future, we're going to make sure they're aligned, just to avoid confusion.
I guess I'm not suggesting that it's increased on the date. It's just that is the first round of arrears, which normally would have, on a normal year, would have been in July. Now we're moving it to January. I was just curious why the difference was, that's all. I think that council has embarked on a system that is fairly generous for people to extend the date out as far as it did. I mean, I have no problem with that. I just wondered why the difference, that's all. I appreciate the explanation. Anyone else? So we have a motion before us for consideration for bylaw 379.1 for third and final reading. If there's no further comment, seeing that, I will call the question. All those in favor? That looks to be unanimous to me. Thank you. And the next item up under request for decision is the Q1 operating variance report. Once again, Manager Reyes.
Thank you, Mayor Christie. This is the first report that administration will be bringing to council for 2020. This report consists of the first 3 months in 2020, from January to March. And what we have done is when you look at the budget, we typically try to allocate 25% of the entire annual budget to the first quarter. And in some cases, what we do is we know that the budget, there is nothing in the first quarter, so we allocate it to a future quarter, such as property taxes. That you will see it in the next report. And if you look at page number 5 in my report, that will give you a sense of where we are at the end of March. So for property taxes, you'll see that we have no budget, and there is just a small adjustment under the actuals. Everything else has been adjusted accordingly based on the information that we have. When it comes to revenues, you will see that we are under budget by around 91,000 or 1.5%. As you may remember, we made some adjustments in the spring adjustments, and those are estimates. Therefore, some of the revenue will be impacted a little more, perhaps, in the quarter than we would have estimated. That would be part of the reason why it would be under budget. But there is also, as you can see, lower revenue on the water side. And that's mainly due to timing. In the first quarter and the last quarter, typically water consumption tends to be lower. So we expect water consumption to pick up a little more in the next 2 quarters. And then there is some other items that you will see that have surpluses and some have deficits. In Q1, it's very difficult to know whether those numbers are going to remain or they will change. But one thing we know is that certain items, we won't have any changes, such as the penalty revenue, as you know, that typically we have a surplus in that revenue line, but this year we will not have any surplus. It'll be on budget. We are anticipating small surpluses in certain items, such as grants. For example, we know that we are receiving 2 grants in the fire department, and because we didn't know whether we were going to be approved or not, we didn't include them in the budget, but that would amount to around 70,000. So we know that that will definitely flow into surplus at the end of the year. We also know that when it comes to investment income, we should be able to realize some surplus. We don't know the exact amount yet, but currently we are actively managing our funds through a professional investment firm, and that will generate higher revenue at the end of the year. As the quarters progress and we bring the next report, we will advise council on what we see that surplus to be at the end of the year. At this point, I would not be able to provide that amount, but I know that we will be expecting some kind of surplus in that revenue line. When it comes to expenditures, right now you can see that there is some surplus in salaries, mainly due to vacancies. With salaries, the challenge right now is to know whether we are actually going to end up in a surplus at the end of the year. With COVID-19, we don't know the exact timing on when we are going to be opening all the facilities, and obviously that will have an impact on salary costs. So therefore, right now, it's very, very difficult to know what that number will look like, but typically we end up in a surplus, and we are hopeful that that COVID-19 will not have a significant impact on salaries at the end of the year. Utilities, when it comes to utilities, you can see that there is a deficit of 28,000. That amount, we are not too concerned. We feel that because the facilities continue to remain closed, there will be some utility cost savings in quarter number 2 and possibly some in quarter number 3. So therefore that deficit, we feel that it will likely go down, and we will end up being close to budget at the end of the year when it comes to utilities. The motion for council tonight is that council accepts this report as information. And with that, I'm open to any questions that council may have.
Thank you. Well, we're mulling that over. I will ask one. I appreciate the time and effort that goes into making these reports. I'm just curious with respect to the Kinsman Aquatic Center. Well, the expenses naturally are down a little bit, I mean, or 5% or something, from 375,000 to 358,000 plus or minus. So is that primarily because of the extra work that went on there for maintenance and whatnot? Because there doesn't seem to be a corresponding drop in revenue, which I found odd, between the year-to-date budget of 81,000 and the year-to-date actual, which was nearly 80,000. I find it hard to believe that we're only down that much, considering it was closed for a significant portion of that quarter. It seemed odd to me, but Chief County?
It's not actually a very significant part of the quarter that it was closed for. It would only have been closed for the last 2 weeks. And so I think that we actually in the winter probably turned a little bit higher just because we are using the pool a little bit more. But I would expect that you'll see those drops in revenue in quarter 2. Actually.
That would make sense then, because it seemed odd to me at first light. So, Councillor Jacobson?
Yeah, I have some questions. I want some clarification on how we're actively managing these surplus funds. So just so clear, it says administration is actively managing, but we have also engaged a professional investment manager. So is that, so administration itself is not managing these funds, but the management professional is? Is that what I'm to understand?
Yes, it is.
You got it, yeah.
It is a collaborative effort. The city needs to make that, undertake an identification of its cash flow needs and look at what funds are actually available for investment without affecting our liquidity to a point where we detrimentally impact. And then we turn those funds, once we made that assessment of how much we'll have for investment, then we turn this over to a professional manager to look at investments for us.
So it says that you hope to mitigate some of the impact that recent events have had on investment portfolios. Is that the city's investment portfolio?
Yes.
So what are we invested in that's being impacted by recent events? 'Cause my understanding is that, yeah, it's
It would be-
really limited to what we can invest in.
Yes, that's true. You wouldn't be directly affected. For example, if the stock market declined, for example, the city is not invested in the stock market. We would be affected by bond rates. Anything else that I should mention?
Mainly that bond rates that you mentioned, and prices, because bond prices also.
So most of our investments are notice demand accounts on 90-day notice. Is that most of our things are 3 months?
A significant portion.
And they're not exposed to the market the way that maybe that would make you think.
I don't, that's what I'm asking. And who is the investment professional we retain, or is that not for public consumption?
It is.
Yes, CABC would have.
Okay, so I mean, I would assume you would have done a cost benefit analysis. Usually the fees are hefty to manage those kind of funds. So with the limited type of investments, we're able to access limited types of return and what they'd be charging. I assume we've done our homework, that this is definitely worth our while to do.
Yes, definitely. Without boring you here, but I would be happy to talk afterwards. The CIBC has actually created some specific products for municipalities that take advantage of the limitations that they have on what they can invest in, but also the fact that there's very predictable cash flow needs and often large available reserves available for investment. And so actually we are able to leverage, I would say, better rates than we probably would expect, given the limitations that we have.
Thank you.
Appreciate you mentioning that, so the public can hear that it is a significant amount of cash in reserve funds that's invested, so appropriate that we keep an eye on it for sure. Thank you. Councillor Konik.
Thank you, Mayor. Under wastewater, we've identified a problem under utilities. Budget at 33,000, we're already at 25, 200% already. There's no budget relief for electrical costs that have been incurred to date. Our electrical contractor is trying to mitigate the issue. Just wondering if that's been, you guys got a handle on that?
No, I would say. It's a short answer, unfortunately. The city is locked into a contract for electricity that has some demand charges associated with it, despite the fact that we are not using that service and have transferred over to the regional sewer. So that is what we're trying to mitigate with our service provider right now, is to essentially get out of the contract early. That obligates us to fairly significant demand charges. And so we have a handle on our approach to it. We're certainly working on it, but I can't say we've made significant progress because we haven't. It's been very challenging.
Well, hopefully you can, because at the rate we're going, much higher than budget. Okay, thank you.
I seem to recall that being a fairly significant amount of money for power. Was it nearly $1,000 a day?
Yes, it was. I was going to say it's around $300,000 for the year. And so that is something that we are actively trying to work on. But again, we actually have been for about a year, and haven't gotten very far on it, so.
And the initial contract was for what term?
Director Thompson, do you recall what the term was? I believe it's 5-year lock-in blocks.
think we're locked into 2022, I think.
So there's 2 or 3 more years.
And so this is under active negotiation, I assume that.
We actually have a consultant working on our behalf. It's not just us attempting to live this. Again, it just has not been as effective as I would hope. So we continue to work at it.
Because this service is no longer in use.
So it's sort of. Anyone else? If not, I believe we have a motion on the floor.
Yeah.
From Councilor Ross?
No.
I did make one.
No, I said well.
No motion.
Thank you, Coordinator Pettibone, appreciate that. Councilor Conick?
So I sort of make that motion then that we accept this report, this information.
Thank you. Nothing else then?
Nice to see
I
you.
will call the question. All those in favor? Unanimous, thank you. And then but down here for the contract award that we're expecting Director Juke. Has that been changed or? She is with us. Very good. Welcome, Director Juke.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy.
Excuse me for suggesting that you weren't here. This adjusting to our COVID protocol is sometimes disruptive when I don't see people on the floor. That's the reason I asked. Before us is item number 5.3, the playground replacement contract award. Would you care to walk us through that item, please?
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Before council tonight is a request for decision on the award of a contract to replace the Heritage Park and Lincoln Park playgrounds. These playgrounds are identified as the 2 oldest and were scheduled for replacement this year to bring them up to the current CSA Z614 standards. Council reviewed and approved this project through the capital budget approval process in late 2019 with a budget of $300,000. And those funds come to us through the Municipal Sustainability Initiative grant program. I must have corrected an error in the report. The RFD states that the city budgets $150,000 per year into a reserve for playground projects, but in fact, we simply budget $300,000 every other year. And the 2022 project is already part of the current 10-year capital plan. So the city initiated an RFP process in March. We received 10 submissions, 5 of which met the minimum criteria for the consideration. And the 5 were then brought on forward for administration's evaluation. And the highest scoring one of those is Philmax Systems. And they proposed 2 different options, one for each of the parks. And those 2 options were then put forward to the Macomb and District Recreation Parks and Culture Board. The board reviewed the proposal and the different options and selected, in fact, option 1 for each of the parks from Vilmac to put forward to council as their recommended option. In addition to standard elements such as outlined in the report, the Vilmac playground designs include a parkour component for Heritage Park called the Bamboo Jungle Junior. And a link was provided in the RFD for council to go ahead to the Vilmac site and view what that feature looks like with children playing on it. In Lincoln Park, the innovative feature is a spinner called Elephant Play. Also, there was a link provided to see that one in action. And both of these will be a first in the city. So it's nice to have innovation. In addition to that innovation, we also asked all proponents to suggest a adult fitness component for each park designs. And we also asked them to propose for washed sand as a ground cover to add a play element to that, to the other purposes for that particular feature. Service level impacts, as I've outlined in the report, essentially this brings our service level back up to where it's supposed to be, the CSA standard playgrounds. It also replaces equipment that is starting to cost a lot in maintenance, repairs. It's a little bit unsafe, and certainly the wood and plastic components of our existing playgrounds will eventually simply fail. So the price for the Vilmac systems designs that are recommended by the board is the two together is $274,445 plus GST, and that allows for an 8% contingency left in the budget, anything that might be needed in the course of the project. Administration is recommending council's decision to award the contract to Vilmac Systems. Any questions? We can answer them now.
Thanks, Director Duke. I did mention, Lynn, that you have Manager of Rec and Culture, Sandy Stewart, with you. Manager Stewart, good to have you back in the building. We don't get to see you there as much these days with you working out of the LMC. Welcome, though. Councilor Koenig?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I support the motion as presented. I just had a couple of quick questions. I thought we were replacing the park in English Estates playground. Is that not slated to be done before these, or no? Am I incorrect in my thinking?
It was considered as a project, and I'll ask Manager Stewart to talk about that a little bit.
It was slated, it's before 2017. So I took my first swing at these playgrounds in 2018. We did the Mitchell subdivision in Essex, and the one at Kew Gardens was prior to that. And there was a public consultation on it, and never really did come to fruition.
Oh, okay, because I know as someone who used to frequent these playgrounds, not so much anymore because my kids are too old and too cool for that. But anyway, I know that park was in dire need, or I thought more so than these, but you've answered my question, that's fine. The only other thing, like I said, support the motion, maybe just for future, just again, I'm not pretty sure I know where Heritage Park and Lincoln Park is, but I'm not 100. Can you just provide a little map, just right there and there kind of thing, just so I can see it? That would be great, just for future. Thank you.
Councilor Jacobson?
Sure, just a little bit of perspective for you all. The rec board, the vast majority of the rec board members took these home and got the most important consensus of all from their kids. So these were the options that overwhelmingly came back. So I think we should take that into consideration as we vote here.
Fathers making the decisions.
Councilor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. First of all, I thought how fun to have this kind of decision in front of you compared to some of the other decisions we've been making lately. I know for sure it must have been in 2018 then, if Manager Stewart said we saw this again. I really wondered what the cost per child was for this, because I rarely saw children. I think I gave a testimony that a new parent moved to Lacombe and she tried every playground in the summer and never encountered another child. And so then I thought, this is almost $300,000. How much is that per child? But post-COVID, playgrounds are really, really busy. So I guess I wouldn't have the same comment this year. So I do see the value in it. And I know I happen to know some little people that are very excited about coming to Lacombe's playgrounds too. So I would happily make that motion if I can find it. There it is. I move that council approves the award of a contract to Vilmac Systems in the amount of $274,445.13 plus GST to replace the playgrounds at Lincoln Park and Heritage Park with their option 1 proposals for each location.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any questions or comments? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? All those none opposed, unanimous. Thank you both. You get to go home early. Appreciate you joining us. Next up, we have back from the previous meeting for Director Thompson, item 5.4, the street sweeper purchase award and subsequent additional information, if you take that in, please.
Certainly can. Thank you, Mayor. And so as you indicated at the last council meeting, administration recommended the replacement of its current Elgin Eagle mechanical street sweeper with a Elgin broom bearer unit. The current unit's at the end of its life, and it certainly its maintenance costs are showing it. It's a unit that was actually two or 3 years beyond its current replacement cycle even, so it's back a few years as well. So at the last meeting, council asked for some additional information regarding the street sweeping level of service, and for administration to explore different options to speed up the time it takes for street sweeping to occur. So as a bit of background, the street sweeping activities typically in the last couple of years, since 2018, have taken around 7 to 8 weeks. And that is because we have double shifted the street sweeper. So we have typically would operate 16 hours a day in order to speed up that time. This year, actually, it is all but concluded. There's 1 day with the sweeping left. And so it started April 22nd and finished June 5th, which is just over 6 weeks. So this year, while it kind of feels like it's a bit longer, I think it started a lot later at the end of April, toward the end of April. But certainly it's finishing in this week, so right early June. So it's typical of the last few weeks as well under the current level of service. However, there are ways in which council can consider speeding up that level of service. And so we've outlined a couple options. Well, option 1 in the report indicates the purchase of a second unit. And so we would keep our current unit as long as we can, and we're suggesting a maximum of 3 more years in order to offset the replacement of a new unit. So we would keep the current unit for a maximum of 3 years, buy a new unit this year, and have 2 units in our fleet that would both be operated or both be double shifted. And that would cost an estimated $13,000, $14,000 for a couple of reasons. One, there's the capital cost of purchasing the new unit, but because we have 2 units, we can now extend the life of each of those units to 15 years rather than 10 years. One of the drawbacks of doing that is it requires operators to drive the units, of course. And so we would have operators doing street sweeping activities at the early part of the season rather than deployed for road maintenance activities. And so while the street sweeping is occurring, we'd have 2 less operators working on maintenance activities, but that is offset by getting the street sweeping activity overall completed a few weeks earlier so that those operators can go and move on to road maintenance activities. And so that's more or less an offset, but certainly early on, you would see less pothole repair, things like that, as soon as the storm. So we would estimate we'd bring the street sweeping down from about 7 to 9 weeks down to 4 to 5 weeks by purchasing a second unit. This is not actually administration's preferred option, primarily because it front-end loads a lot of effort and it results in a piece of equipment sitting for much of the year, because you'd have 3 or 4 weeks of 2 street sweepers working really around the clock essentially, and then for the rest of the year, one of those units at least will be always sitting until the next peak period the following year. So the other option that we're putting forward for council's consideration is just contracting street sweeping services. And so we would replace the current unit as recommended, and then add contracted service to sweep our arterial roads for us. They have high-speed units and are able to take that workload off of the current fleet. And so this would, because street sweeping would be completed earlier than normal, again, an estimated in a period of 4 to 5 weeks versus the current 7 to 8. This would also allow an operator to be completed earlier and onto road maintenance activities earlier than they would today. So there's an advantage there. It also allows us to extend the current life cycle of the current unit from 10 years to 15 years, because it would also be operating less hours per year. We would still look to double shift the street sweeping activities throughout the year. And then this option would cost an estimated $25,000 per year. This one has, it's the administration's preferred option. It has less risk in downtime. Holding on to the current unit, it is at the end of its life, and we do see a risk that some significant mechanical failure could increase costs or make the purchase of a second unit within the 3 years much like a needed activity. An additional consideration that we wanted to bring forward for council as well, particularly because we also have the snow clearing policy on the agenda, is the impact to the, I guess, the perception of street sweeping being too slow. If council were to look at removing snow off the roads, there would be significantly less aggregate on the roads come springtime, and there would be less coordination that is required of our parks crews and our roads crews in order to sweep the whole city. And so we make a concerted effort to have the roads swept after the boulevards are swept, in order to not brush a bunch of gravels onto a freshly swept road. And so that does delay things a little bit. And so by having less aggregate on the road, there's probably less of an impact to residents in the area, as well as it would likely speed up street sweeping overall by approximately 1 week, we would estimate. It is difficult to put a firm number on it, but certainly that could increase the perception that the roads are dirty without actually increasing the level of service to the street sweeping activity itself. And so, as I said on the top of the presentation, it is administration's preference that the current level of service remain as is. 6 to 8 weeks is what we have been able to achieve typically, and that would require the replacement of the mechanical street sweeper this year. So that would be motion number 1. But there are other motions for council's consideration at the end of that.
Thank you, Director Thompson. Councilor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. So did we finish in the time frame that we did this year because we were 4 on, 4 off? Or in a normal year, would we have double shifted it?
We would still have double shifted in a normal year.
So I'm just curious, you suggested there was some inherent risk with this one because of the age of the wood. I know that's fair enough, but I think for me, the one significant thing that we did not take into account was having 2 units. And the risk is quite the opposite then. Should one go down for whatever reason, even though I realize the other one's newer, new stuff where it has mechanical issues too. So I think there's some, albeit arguably insignificant, there is some benefit to having the 2 units as well. As far as the time frame, if we can bring this down to below a month, into the 3 or 4 weeks, I think it would be very well received by citizens. But Councilor Hibbs.
Yeah, so I have a bunch of questions actually. You commented on that we have 1 day left of, and I'm assuming that's the south, like Mackenzie. So that was actually scheduled Friday, but it's now scheduled Tuesday. And I understand that's because the machine broke. And so we're actually bringing a different one in from a neighboring community, or is it going to be repaired, or what is the deal there?
Well, we are awaiting council's decisions tonight before we make the decision to repair it, but certainly, yes, there's a mechanical issue with the current unit, and we have we've called in the town Black Falls to assist us to get the one day left on the street sweeping, and they've graciously agreed to do that. But as of right now, we're waiting council's decision on whether we should repair this unit or.
And then also you did comment on the timeline, the overall timeline that is start to finish to do the roads in the community, but I'm wondering, like, it would be probably beneficial to see what it looks like with your main roads being done, what's the timeline, because those are the priority, of course, so your priority 1 and 2, whatever, and then what it takes to do the residential. I guess my big problem with this whole discussion is that it's, and we've used the word over and over again, perception, that our roads are, you know, perceived to be dirty, that it's perceived to be taking so long. And honestly, we're talking about aggregate on the roads, which in the grand scheme of things is really only an issue if you're a motorcyclist or a cyclist. I am both, so I know what that means. With priority 1 and 2, the roads you're actually probably doing some sort of speed on, those are done first. Those are done very early in the season. Honestly, the, you know, Mackenzie, for example, Crescent, the one that we're waiting on right now to get done is a residential narrow road. You're not going to be doing any sort of speed on that. So like the hazard like side of things is negligible. So I don't really understand the whole concept of this conversation, honestly. Like, there's perception and then there's what we actually do spend money on. So I'm concerned that by investing time and effort into doing road sweeping, that we're not doing road maintenance. And honestly, potholes and things like that, for me, are more of a concern. I hear more about potholes and whatnot from the community than I ever hear about road sweeping. So I don't know, I guess I just want to put that out there that, like, is this really something that should be a high priority that we really need to be spending money on? Certainly the idea of keeping the second unit, that does seem to be problematic to the, you know, to the point where it's breaking down. I don't even know if we want to fix it. I guess I just want to put that out there to council. I personally am not in favor of a second unit. I think if we do anything, that it would be a contract, like bring in a contractor, but I just find this whole conversation, I can't find the very politically correct word for it, but honestly, this is not what we need to be spending our time and money on. We should be looking at things like road maintenance and, you know, the other things that citizens really actually want for safety, you know, for wear and tear on their vehicle, that sort of thing. So I just put that out there.
Thank you. Let's not be leaving people with the impression that road maintenance will not be done because of this either direction. It's merely a timing issue, and money will be spent on both, but your point is well taken. I just didn't want people that are watching to be left with the impression that somehow any road maintenance would not be done because of this, but it will certainly be a timing adjustment. Well, should they choose to do it first, then absolutely. Councillor Connick?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. I too support administration's original recommendation of just replacing the old unit. While I appreciate the administration taking a second look at this direction, I struggle with that too a little bit. To have 2 units sit there for 10 months of the year. I mean, I think there's merit to this idea. If you're replacing a front end loader or a dump truck, you might want to hold on to one of those pieces of equipment for a little bit longer. But a street sweeper, again, if it's just to make things go a little quicker, again, in my time on council, I've never had anyone come to me and say, why isn't these streets swept quicker? But that's just me. So I'm fine with the 8 weeks that it takes. I don't think it merits the second unit that's especially problematic. It's busted down again, so let's just be done with that piece of crap and just go with a new one and be done with it. And then Greg, as Councillor Hibbs has alluded to, again, there's always going to be, this is one of those things, I've said this before, you're never going to get 100% right with garbage or with snow removal or with street sweeping. There's always going to be criticism on all levels about those items because it's never going to be right, perfect for everybody. And this is one of those things where in a perfect world, we'd have it done in 2 weeks, but that's just not the case. Maybe it takes 8 weeks, so be it. I'm fine with the way. Thank you.
Councillor Gullickson?
Thank you, Mayor Christie. A couple of questions regarding the contractor. Availability, isn't everybody wanting them all at the same time? Are they available? Like, can you easily get one to come and do it when you want them to come?
We would just pre-schedule them, and so we would know, like, they would they would know we would need them as soon as the snow melted. But yeah, you're right, there's a demand on them. But roads manager did confirm with several contractors that they have availability and are willing to enter into a contract with the city of Lacombe for such a service.
And I'm just kind of missing it here, like this $45,000, is that how much it was, or what is?
Yeah, option 2 was $45,360 for 3 weeks. That's contracted.
So over 10 years is approximately $500,000 expense. And that would kind of look like a second unit then, in a way, with maintenance and capital costs, is that right?
Yeah, in a way, because it's all built into the unit rate, or into the rate we pay the contractor, with the advantages of reducing or increasing the unit, increasing the amount of time we actually need them. So if we do find in a light year, we need them only for 2 weeks, we only pay for 2 weeks. If we need them for 4 weeks, we want to pay for 4 weeks. So there is some flexibility on the city from that point of view.
Because you're averaging approximately $20,000 a year in maintenance on these units, is that correct? Like 90,000 or something like that?
Yeah, well, $20,000.
Yeah. Okay, I'm just curious on that. I feel that we should only have one unit also. I don't find that street sweeping a problem. I think that they do a really good job, and I mean, if you're out there on your bicycle and you come to the corner, and you have to be careful for sure, but I think they're doing a great job, and I think one unit is more than enough, and if we find it isn't, if the contractors are easily available, we could start that later on, correct?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. All right. Thank you.
Councilor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I noticed your numbers didn't change in terms of purchase price, because usually when you don't have a trade, your price will be less, but your numbers haven't changed. It's still 373 for a new one. We didn't, sorry.
Chief Cody?
So we do have if there is a trade-in, it'll be 325,093. And then option 2 is option 1, which would be alternative 2, and option 2 both contemplate, option 1, which is no trade-in and keep 2 street sweepers, is 373. Option 2, which would be contracted service, trade in the existing street sweeper and buy a new one, is back at that 325. So 50,000 is.
Sorry, I kind of.
So appreciate everybody's input. I guess I in fact do hear from people that complain about the gravel and whatnot on the streets, but I guess for me, I see this as an increase in service that is is priced very minimally. I think the impact for the $13,000 a year is well worth it. But it sounded like there was some difference in opinion. Councilor Connick.
Well, at this point, I'm prepared to make a motion.
Thank you.
The council approve the purchase of the England Brown Groom Bear mechanical street sweeper from Joe Johnson Equipment for a net cost of $325,093.
Very good. Any additional discussion? All those in favor? That would be one opposed. Thank you. However this item went, there's going to be some happy individuals at Public Works to get a brand new street sweeper, however it went, so that's a good thing.
How much was the repair?
And I'm trying to think, there was one other question I had that I had asked you to look into. Does this new unit
have a different
water pump?
Yes, it does. I think the old unit used a hydraulic system and the new unit used an electric system. And you're well aware of the design flaw.
Slide a few checks for water pumps.
Very good. Yes. Pages out of order here, one moment. Bear with me. And the next item up, Once again, Director Thompson, item 5.5 is snow clearing policy review.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. This is a summary of the snow clearing or the snow clearing, hauling, and sanding activities that occurred in the 2019-2020 season. This report was prepared with a multidisciplinary effort, and so I am summarize what I have from the roads department and cover in a more high level those from the parks department as well as from bylaw, which also which are included in this report as they have in past years. And so this year, from a roads perspective, from a snow clearing and hauling perspective, the current policy, we were able to meet the policy targets generally throughout the year. As previous years, we have had Alberta Highway Services do snow clearing through town on 2A and 12. They have a different plow system that allows them to do that work very efficiently, and they have confirmed that they're prepared and willing to continue contracting with the City of Lacombe throughout for that service on our main roads. There's some statistics in the report as well for council's information. Priority 1s and 2 roadways were cleared 45 different days throughout the season. Priority 3 roads were cleared once, and that took 22 days to do. There were a number of times which the downtown core lanes and parking lots were cleared as well. Our lanes were cleared a total of 4 times downtown, and there was a paved lane on the south side of Seniors Lodge that was cleared 6 times through the season as well. And city-owned parking lots were cleared 6 times as well. As with nearly every year, there are some amount of displeasure with the snow clearing service, and some of those issues that we received from residents are documented in the report. They are consistent with past years in terms of complaints of the snow clearing service not being quick enough, that there has been damage that occurred on landscaping features on private property, aggregate on corner lots in particular, lots adjacent to priority 2 roads or priority 1 roads that just get sanded more often and cleared more often, has been a source of complaint. But it's usually a small amount of people that do complain. They just are impacted more often than other residents, and they let us know. In terms of sidewalks, walkways, and trails, I'll turn it over to Director Juke to speak to those.
Thank you, Director Thompson. Mayor and Council, the sidewalk, walkway, and trail snow clearing in 2019-2020 generated no public complaints to speak of. And our service level is outlined in the first paragraph. As you can see, we adhere to the bylaw requirements as much as possible. And I'll just remind Council as well that in terms of walkways and trails, the parks crews clear paved city walkways and trails only, not unpaved ones, with a few exceptions. We were able to effect the service level that required without any overtime or weekend stat holiday callbacks. Resources used includes 3 full-time department staff using snow clearing equipment with varying capacity. The snow clearing policy map, I believe, was not ready to be included. We did have a version, but it was not clear, so we decided to keep it out. But I'll just let you know that the priority levels in that policy are for us to clear downtown sidewalks, school, foot, traffic walkways, all other sidewalks fronting city-owned property, and paved trails and walkways. And our 4th level priority is outdoor skating rinks. The service level changes from 2018 no longer generate complaint or comment. That's the case where the city was clearing a number of sidewalk stretches that kind of linked trails and walkways, but were in fact fronting privately owned property, and we stopped doing that. It was a little difficult to accept at first. It seems to have been accepted now. We do a couple of other unusual areas, sometimes along Grass Boulevard on the east side of 50th, for example, is an example of a walkway that we clear and create essentially for the safety of school children. And we did occasional plowing in the dog park and on the dog park on Len Thompson Drive.
So if Diane, or Director Piché was here, she would cover the bylaw enforcement aspects. But in summary, 9 tickets without towing the vehicle for snow removal operations were enforced. 17 tickets and towed vehicles for snow removal operations, and bylaw officers were able to come to a more resolution on 9 properties that were an issue without having to issue a ticket or a fine. Before council as well, in January, administration presented a potential change to snow clearing level of service to move to full hauling of snow off the roads where it made sense to do so. And that, I guess that is on the table for council's consideration. At this time, we're not recommending a policy update to the snow clearing policy. But certainly if council wishes to fund that change in service, then we would update the policy the following year to reflect them.
Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Upon that presentation previously with we were presented with the cost of $75,000 for extra trucking approximately. And I just brought up to one of the administration with some of the complaints you see pertaining to aggregate. Is it too much? Because obviously you're going on every lot. Some people have an issue with aggregate, some people don't. Power sweeping, is that an option to deal with aggregate so you don't have to haul out snow away? Was that explored or?
I think we did discuss that, and it was felt that it generally accounted for more complaints and more chance for disruption of people's property than what the aggregate did. So it's a fair question, but it's an option. It unfortunately isn't as easy as one might think. Anything to add to that, Chief Cody?
No, I was just seeing if I could find any information that we definitely have looked at that before as an option. I think that is the concern, is that there's such a chance for damage to property that could actually end up generating potentially more complaints. But I know we have looked at that as an option, but the hauling away was the better option cost-wise.
Director Thompson?
I would just add that if we do have issues where we have a particular corner lot or something where there is a particularly
obvious.
Yeah, it's obvious it's a problem. It's very different from this corner from along the street. We would absolutely go and clean that property to try to help out, because for instance, we did there's a water leak repair in the winter downtown, and because of the gravels that we put on there, as well as it being on a corner lot, there was an excessive amount of gravel on a particular corner lot, and we did work with that resident to clean that up. So we will do that if it's in a spot that is very different from the rest of the lots on that block. If it's much worse than the rest of the lots on that block.
Councillor Hooster?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. This is a great report. I just wonder if next year we could have some comparison. So city crews sat in roads in 75 days, and then it says priority 1 and 2 was for 45 operational days. How does that compare to other years? And I realize some of that is the winter. It's not necessarily useful information, but I would find it useful under bylaw. Like, I'm quite surprised there was no tickets issued. And I think that's really excellent to see that 9 property owners were just worked with successfully without tickets. Like, I love hearing that, because at one coffee with council, I definitely had that complaint from a citizen that said they just felt like in Lacombe, they just ticket everybody. And this kind of information is great to have, but how does it compare to last year? Like, was there 15 tickets last year and now we successfully worked with 9 and have none? That would be really neat to know. But kudos to bylaw and kudos to city staff for all of that. That's excellent.
Chief Gotti?
So we will include that past information. Since we've been doing this, we actually have a great reference, so we can
Great.
do that. Just in response to Councillor Ross's question about power brewing, we did look at this in actually February of this year and put together a bit of a response that went through some of the factors that we consider. And so I'll just remind you of those. One of the biggest ones is that we need to start mowing at the same time as we would be doing a lot of that brewing, and it's the we only have the 3 pieces of equipment, so it'd be a lot of switching back and forth of the attachments. And then the other factor that we had talked about was the coordination, the additional coordination that would be required between parks and the roads department to ensure that they were properly sweeping before us, before our roads department going and sweeping the roads. So when I look at this, certainly it's we'd said there are complicating factors with residential lawn sweeping, but they're not insurmountable. Beaumont and Sylvan Lake, for example, do that very certainly. So it's certainly achievable. I can forward this on to you again after the meeting.
It was brought up by citizens as different options.
Do you think you need a motion on this item? Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mike Creasy. That I move that council accept administration's report on snow clearing policy as information.
Very good. Anything additional for consideration? All those in favor of the motion? Then I didn't see it, so I'll call with any opposed. Looks like that was unanimous. Thank you. And once again, Director Thompson, item 5.6 is tender award for the generator for Pump House A.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Before council is a request to authorize administration proceed with the replacement of a backup generator at Pump House A. The pricing came in under budget, and we are recommending council proceed. Administration tendered the project, the replacement project, and received 6 bids. The preferred or the lowest bidding contractor, Satanta Contracting, is the recommended contractor to proceed with the work. So the work will continue, or will proceed as soon as possible, pending council's authorization. It will take a few weeks for the generator to arrive. I think I said here 12 to 16 weeks for the generator to arrive, and then it will be installed and operational before the end of the year. So if council recalls, this particular unit is from 1970, and actually this one was up for replacement prior to the Pump House B generator. It was last year, but the Pump House B generator had failed, and parts were virtually impossible to source. And they're both the same manufacturer that is now out of business. And so I think replacing this generator now before we're in a position of not having any backup generator is prudent. And so we're recommending council proceed.
Thank you, Director Thompson. I didn't recall what the installation was on the previous pump houses. Is this motor similar in nature? So there's some benefit of similar parts and that kind of thing as the others that have been installed in?
Yes, I believe they're both Frontier units.
The reason I asked that, it just seemed odd to me. I mean, I have no preference in any of these companies. It just seemed odd when one was significantly lower at the bottom. One that's the low bid, and then the next 2 or 3 together were fairly similar. I'm just curious. That's a significant amount on that dollar figure to be $20,000 to the next bid. Are you confident that everything was accounted for in that bid?
I am confident. We have Stantec reviewed the bidding documents and vet the company through their experience, and they're recommending Satanta being the recommended contractor. And so certainly confident that they will be able to do the work. That said, we've never worked with Santanta. They are, as far as the city of Lacombe goes, a new contractor, but there's nothing that precludes them from us awarding them the work.
Thank you. Councillor Goetson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. I'll make that motion. I council direct administration to award Santana Contracting Limited for the removal, supply, and install of the standby generator at Pump House A for $143,175.
Thank you. Anyone else? All those in favor? That was unanimous as well, thank you. And we had one item that was added on for a utility-related concern. And put on the agenda is item 5.7 by Councillor Jacobson. Floor is yours.
Sure. I move that council reject the request from Wade Oldford for forgiveness in whole or in part of his utility bill. Further direct administration to work with him to the greatest extent possible to make some arrangements for the full amount that will reflect his current situation.
Thank you. Coordinator Pettibone, did you hear that motion?
I got the first half, but some of it kicked out. To request from Wade Oldford for forgiveness and direct administration to look at. That's about all I got.
Direct administration to look at payment arrangements for the entire amount that would assist Mr. Oldford in clearing up his bill.
So one time back in its entirety, please, Ross.
So Councillor Jacobson moves that council reject the request from Mr. Wade Oldford for forgiveness and direct administration to look at payment arrangements for the entire amount that would assist Mr. Oldford in clearing up his bill.
Okay, thank you. Any additional questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I will call for a vote. All those in favor? And opposed? So noted. Councillor Connick in opposition. Coordinator Pettibone?
Thank you.
Thank you. I believe that's all the requests for decision this evening. So we'll move into the information portion. And one item that was not on the agenda. As chair, I'm going to bring forward anyway because it's always a good time for good news. I just want to let you know that I received a letter just this afternoon, the reason why it isn't on the agenda, from the Honorable Rick McIver, Minister of Alberta Transportation, suggesting that he is pleased to advise council that our project, Airport Runway and Taxiway Rehabilitation, will be funded under the Strategic Transportation Infrastructure Program, or STIP as we know it, the Community Airport Program, making us eligible for a grant of 75% of the estimated project costs, up to a maximum of basically $611,000. So that was good news. It will be entered officially into the minutes for next week, but I thought it was an appropriate way to start out our information portion. Chief Gowdy, administrative report to start with, please.
So the administrative report is attached. In terms of the Emergency Coordination Center, it remains active. We have no recommendation for declaration of state of emergency at this time. We anticipate in June potentially looking at standing down the Emergency Coordination Center as the province looks to not renew their state of emergency under the Health Act. Administratively, I do want to advise you that with the 5 meetings in June, that is taking a lot of our time, and so we have very limited capacity to take on additional duties during this June period. We are getting into the holiday season, summer, and So we have staff that will be gone, including myself, for the meeting of the 15th. Director Thompson is going to be leading you through the solid waste review. I have full confidence that they'll do a great job doing so. So thank you for your patience as we are working to those deadlines right now to get the agendas out for you. Other than that, we're dealing with some spring rainfall issues. We've been working closely with the city of Red Deer to ensure our flows are regulated in a way that's allowing them to meet the needs of all their customers. And then, of course, we're undertaking our usual spring repairs. It has been because of the way the freeze-thaw cycles worked this year, it has been a highly damaging thaw on the roads and some of our underground infrastructure. I would say maybe the worst ever that I've experienced. I would say that that's a possibility. And so we're working away on that as well.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Chief Gowdy? Not pretty late.
Actually, just to,
Certainly, Councillor Conick.
I just wanted to make a comment. I see that the road north of Sini was redone, repatched. North of Sini had not done. That's a huge improvement from what it was. So thank you for doing that, because I'm one of the few that frequent that road quite a bit, and it's nice thing. Thank you.
I have a question. Councillor Gullickson.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Did other municipalities have to divert flow?
Yes, they did.
They did, because of the heavy rain.
So the Silver Lake system also diverted flows to their emergency storage systems. Unfortunately, the South Red Deer Regional Wastewater Services Commission did not receive funding to construct diversionary infrastructure. So they've had to actually lobby for that for the last 5 or 6 years. It has only recently been approved, and I believe it is under construction now. But they're adding that diversionary capacity and stuff.
Good there. Under council mailbox, the letter from the Alberta government for under MSI funding from May 19th. Any questions for administration on that? Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Is that what you anticipated or more or less?
That is what we anticipated.
And then the one from May 22nd for seniors housing. Any questions there? Next up are the commission's, boards, and committee reports and minutes from the Parks and Rec, March 16th. Councillor Jacobson, anything you care to add?
No, I'll just maybe comment, reached out to me reviewing the simple running about the Central Alberta Youth Unlimited program that was approved partially, or their funding request partially approved by the Rec Board. I'm worrying about perhaps if it exceeds the mandate of the Rec Board to do something like that. And see, you notice, you look at it, it was a split vote to do it, and I actually made the motion for it. And the reason why I supported it, and then the program was essentially teaching the at-risk youth to meal plan, but then sharing that meal with other people of need within the community, which the mandate of the Rec Board is to worry about people's health, both physically and mentally. And so I thought it was actually a pretty interesting idea to promote sort of to promote community cohesiveness. People who obviously, and it was obviously even more pressing with what's happened since then, with people being more isolated. So I think that even though it's outside the box and probably a little bit more expensive than we would like for the amount of people that are using it, I think it's a unique program, so that's why I supported it. But again, that just speaks more toward the rationale for those who reached out. I'm curious about that.
Thank you for that. Any questions before we move on to the next one? From April 1st, oddly enough, from April Fools, the MPC minutes. Any questions on that? And in the middle of the month, from the Lacombe Police Commission minutes. Councillor Conick, anything to add to those? Any questions or concerns for anyone? And And then the Macomb Public Library financial statements. Councillor Dawson, anything you care to add to those, or to that submission?
Can answer any questions people would like.
Very good. Do we have any? We'll move into council reports. Councillor Hoekstra.
Yes, Mayor Creasy. I don't have a written report, but I had a couple of things happen this past week that I just wanted to report on. The chamber met on Monday, and I just wanted to say it publicly that they have now moved. Their offices at the County of Lacombe building. So they are looking to kind of refocus as a chamber. And what was I good? I think that was the main thing, that they moved. And then secondly, I wanted to report on behalf of the Rickabitzoo committee. We discussed them at the committee meeting on June 1st. The society had a delegation of 6 people who went to Japan last year, and part of their time in Japan is they were participated in learning calligraphy, and they didn't know it, but all of their creations were submitted to a competition, and someone from Lacombe won a bronze award at this fairly prestigious event. It's called the International Modern Calligraphy Exhibition, but that's all they know. They don't know who won the award or anything like that. So we're waiting because there will be our friends in Japan, the town of Rickabitzoo will send us who actually won the award, but it's quite something to win a bronze. So I thought I just wanted to highlight that. So that's some of the fun things about our twinning with Rickabitzoo.
Thank you. Councillor Ross.
I accidentally deleted my template, so I'll do a verbal one. At FCSS, FCSS was successful in obtaining a few grants, funding from the SIP grant over 2 years, and the social services support, another grant as well. Personally, it's going to be interesting after all of our provincial and federal programs, in my opinion. I emphasized to him that I think October, November, December, after our credit deferrals and the provincial and federal assistance, we're concerned of that time period. So that's the unknown yet. Hopefully there's the phase 2 and 3 goes very well, that people can get back to work. Anyways, also a short meeting with Culture and Tourism, and it was just basically reviewing their intentions in the meetings from the county and the cities and input. So I just emphasized that I felt we could have more collaboration to update between the city's website and the Culture and Tourism so that they're in sync more. So I just emphasized them to contact CEO Gowdy if we can assist them with our staff in the future. So that's my reply.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Jacobson, anything to report? No, thank you. Councillor Hibbs. Councillor Connick.
My report is there. Just a quick, I had a phone call from a citizen just after I submitted this report. Again, we've talked about this a little bit already about maintenance of bear lots within city limits. This individual was, first off, was pleased with bylaw because bylaw is already issued in this particular case for this particular bear lot a notice already. So she was quite happy with bylaw because they've been on the ball. So kudos to them. But she's just wondering if, again, we need to revisit it because the fines are pretty low. She's saying that notice maybe could have gone out a little earlier. By the time they get the notice, by the time they deal with it, the deadlines have bloomed and caused all kinds of problems. Anyways, like I say, we've talked about this before with council. I don't know if I may bring forth another motion, I don't know, to revisit this again. I think again, it's like as I alluded to with the snow removal, it's one of these things, I don't know if it'll get perfect, but maybe I know we just talked about it not too long ago, about maintenance of these bear lots and looking at the developers or whoever owns them. But maybe we need to look at it again. That's it.
Thank you, Councillor Connick. Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. To further with that, I feel at times, now we're in the third summer of our term of council. It's the same repetitious businesses, repetitious residents. And I empathize with CO Gowdy receiving calls or Director Boucher or whatever it may be addressed to, that these are the repetitious ones. Why is there so much leniency of going through the process of warning them or and so forth? Why not just handle the ticket since it's the same ones complaining? I guess I would just run out of patience if I were you. I would just say, okay, bylaw, here's the red flag list of these same ones every year. Take them, be done with it.
Chief County?
So I guess I empathize with that concern. I would say I would go a step further though, and it does not just frustrate me to have the same properties complained about over and over, because it is difficult to deal with those same properties over and over. There is a process, but it is equally frustrating to have the same complainant over and over. In this instance that we're talking about, I'm sure I had a lengthy discussion with the same individual, as I have many times. And the expectations of that individual, or some of our frequent callers, do not line up with the expectations that we can insist on for the property owners themselves and the community. There are certainly some frequent issues, and to that end, we have set up with our new GIS database analyst, we set up a specific map to red flag those properties, so they will show up red flag, and the bylaw officers will frequently inspect them. But we are not really able to shortcut a lot of the cross timelines and processes that are dictated both in your bylaw and in the Municipal Government Act, even in the case of a repeat offender. The option that you have available to you is for escalating fines, and we'll certainly be making use of those this summer. So I would expect that you will see some improvement on those problem properties, and I advised the individual again that assuming we both talk to the same, and I think she'll be quite pleased to see some of the action.
Thank you. I think that is a noted difficulty with consistently the same properties, whatnot that are. However, everyone is afforded due process, and quite often neighbors and specific individuals in the community would prefer prompter service. In a lot of instances, these types of things are a difficult thing. For instance, with weeds and whatnot, I mean, you can't ticket somebody before there's weeds in the spring, even though there might be in all likelihood, a potential issue that's going to happen on any given property. Like I said, everyone still has to have the due process, and it does present difficulties. There's no question about it. Nobody ever said education was easy. Councillor Connick.
Just to be fair, I wouldn't make that assumption.
Sure.
This is someone I haven't heard from for many, many years, so thank you.
Where do we have with reports?
Mine.
Councillor Connick, or Councillor Holzer, rather, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Creasy. Normally you start with me, so I'm a little.
That's why.
Thank you.
You're messing me up.
I know. And we had two items to report NPC meeting on May 20th. It was 2 items on the agenda. And then the library meeting, which normally library meetings, you're at a library, it's pretty quiet. This one was much different. It was our first one to get back together. And we talked about the reopening on the 19th of June. So it's there's a number of things they have to do. And I understand some of their screening and so on has been delayed, so they're not going to be able to open exactly on time. But they certainly are going through all the steps and looking forward to getting back to having people in the library. Even though the children's program will not be running, they'll be doing that online as best they can. And I think they've done a fairly good job of dealing with the COVID situation. And right now they're doing book pickups. You can order a book and pick it up outside. And the books go into quarantine. I didn't know that. If they go into quarantine for 72 hours. It's wrong. Go ahead.
So, sorry. I just wanted to make a comment that a number of weeks ago, Councillor Clark had asked if the library is, staff there are forced to wear surgical masks, will the province cover the cost? And I had quite adamantly said, won't happen because they're not gonna be required to do that. I haven't checked the actual requirements from the library, but given the change that occurred following that discussion with the federal recommendations for the use of the masks, I think it is very possible that that is going to be a requirement, and so I want to apologize that I had quite strongly said, no, that won't happen. And in fact,
It could happen. And they understand, we had a really good discussion. Everybody understands this whole process will be just flowing and changing as the new guidelines come out for the libraries, but they're very excited to get opened again. The other thing they wanted to mention, and they mentioned it a number of times, is the help they got from city staff, especially with HR and when they did their layoffs and Barb's assistance there, because that was very difficult for them to do the layoffs. And the other thing that isn't on here that did happen, and Deb now has to report, is that they are tracking library users. So they have a list, and they were able to backdate it to show where all the users were from. And to the best of our knowledge, depending on where they're from, you may not get it quite right. Like it shows the county usage at 20%, but they may have got their card from Clive. So it's, the Clive usage would be different. But it is a really good report, and they'll give us some numbers to compare to look at additional funding potentially from the county of Lacombe, because currently it's only at 2%.
But I was wondering if you could just explain the difficulty with the layoffs. Was that morally, or couldn't fill in the paperwork, or what was the big deal?
Yeah, well, actually, there was both, to be honest with you, because it was difficult to do the layoffs, long-term staff and so on. And then Barb's assistance in just doing all the paperwork, ensuring that their employees got all the programs that were available from the governments, and making sure that everybody had all the support that they needed. And some of their staff are not willing to come back under certain circumstances either, and they may run out of support, but until this is cleared up.
Fair enough. Thank you. Councillor Hoekstra?
Thanks, Mayor Creasy. So preschools or play schools in Alberta have been allowed to open again. So why wouldn't the children's programs at the library?
That may be just a preference on the coordinator. She may not want to, Miss Mary might not want to do it. She's doing some online stuff.
Okay.
And just in the way that's set up at our library, you've been in that room, so you understand it. And it's a very confined space. Unless they look at doing something where they maybe go up to the Kinsman room or something like that in the LMC and do something different, where they can spread out a little bit more. But I think for the summer, they're not doing the summer program.
So with respect to the reports that were given tonight, any other additional questions? Very good. I think that the only other, as we do not have any notice of motion this evening, but we do have the adoption of minutes from May 25th. Has everyone had an opportunity to review those? Councilor Hoekstra?
I make a motion to accept the reports as information.
Sure, we can do those separate, that'd be fine.
Don't we always do them separate?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay. That's my motion to accept is it reports? It's called reports. Yeah. It's information.
Very good. All those in favor? Thank you. Minutes from May 25th. Councilor Hibbs.
I didn't see any errors, so I move that we accept them as presented.
Thank you. Any concerns, changes, revisions? All those in favor? Thank you. Unanimous. So that does bring us down to item number 9. There's a few in-camera items. It is now 6:40, so we will reconvene at 6:50 and undertake to come up with some ideas to deal with these in-camera items 9.1, 2, and 3. We have a motion accordingly.
I'll make the motion to move the camera.
In the camera at 9:40. Like I said, we will reconvene at 9:50, or I'm sorry, 6. Not used to being this early into
Thanks a lot.
honestly, I had Councilor Richter in mind with the 9:40, sorry about that comment. All those in favor? Thank you. Are we offline?